Good morning, Anthony. Welcome to today's session. You've got me, Angus. We will be covering a MSM WHS 200 Work Safely module today. So, my name is Angus. My background is I began my career in the WHS stream as a HSR for a production company, attending WHS meetings, slowly built on some training and experience. Got a Cert 4 in TAE, and now I've got a job instructing and delivering lessons on work safely. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, look, as you may be aware, I'm in charge of a bunch of blokes, and recently I had a bit of an incident and fell over, broke my arm.
Yeah.
So
it does sound like a painful one.
Oh, it was. I was spending a couple of weeks off work, recuperating. Just came back. So I know we started something before the incident happened. So just here so we can address where I missed off.
Excellent, and thanks for that. Because so today's purpose. We're covering a 30-minute refresher. As you mentioned, that you started taking part in some training. Unfortunately, hopefully the injury is getting a little bit better.
It's still a bit sore, but
we'll take it slow and steady today. I have got some print-offs for you if you need, and I'll happily take down notes for you or write things down if you do need. But we'll try and keep it digitally based if we can.
Okay.
But so today we're going to have a 30-minute refresher where we're going to be covering hazard identification and risk assessment, moving on to risk control, and WHS participation within the workplace. Before we kick off with the actual presentation, just a bit of housekeeping at the moment with while we're in this lesson. So in terms of, in the event of emergency, such as a fire alarm or any sort of chaos, we'll safely and smoothly exit the room. We'll follow the emergency exit downstairs into the evacuation point just outside in the clearing. In the event of you need a first aid kit or a defibrillator, that's also outside just close to the room. If you do feel lightheaded or anything, please let me know. We'll have a bit of a break. We'll figure it out and see what's going on. In terms of amenities, there is toilet just outside to the right as well. If you do need to go, just let me know and we'll have a quick pause in the break. We'll have a break and we'll head out there and do business. Bit of an icebreaker. Again, like you've heard a little bit about my background in terms of WHS, but outside of work, in terms of my favorite food, my favorite cafe in Geelong area, I think I do quite like the bagel place. Does delicious fresh bagels.
I heard they're pretty good.
I've been taking MJ there every so often the past few mornings, but I enjoy my coffee as well to kick off the day.
You've got to be careful, you might end up looking like me.
But is there any favourite foods that I should keep an eye out for around the area?
Oh, look, I like my Mexican. Near where I am, we've got a place called the Burrito Bar. And they do some really, really good stuff. Yeah.
Tacos, fajitas, burritos.
Burritos, yum.
Okay, so we'll begin with hazard identification and risk. So, as you can see above on the diagram, a hazard is anything that can cause harm. Thinking about the bike shop, could be loose parts on the floor, shop tools left out on the bench, and a risk is how likely that hazard will actually hurt someone. Thinking about further examples on the bike shop, so like a hazard might be an oil spill, and that risk might be a slip injury. Furthermore, maybe something like a frayed power cable is a hazard, and that brings with it the risk of an electrical shock. Can you think of any maybe examples you might come across in a bike shop?
Oh, well, if you don't have a properly secured bike stand, you put a bike on there that can fall on the operator and injure them if they're not expecting or holding the weight.
Excellent.
The other thing which I've seen in the past is, where people servicing bikes haven't cleaned their tools properly and they're covered in oil and whatever, and you see hand injuries from when they took this hand slid off their tools and they whack something.
Yep.
So seen that a few times.
That's why like first aid kits are.
The band-aids get a good whack. So
maybe even like some trips to like ED. Hopefully we can avoid that. Okay. it seems like you definitely understand the idea of hazards. What I've noticed, your boss has given me a template form of what your company uses as a hazard identification form. I'll give you a copy of one so you can go through. That's like a textbook answer. As we go through it, just bear in mind that this is a good, I guess, a form that you can notify your superiors of if there's any fresh hazards that they've identified, which then like cascades down to like implementing new controls. Thinking about it, some stuff on the list. Was there anything that is on that list that you haven't come across before?
No, I'll be honest. I've seen stuff like this, in the past. I have raised a couple of those issues previously with management. We've also got some other current hazards too. In relation to washing your hands and stuff like that. Because at the moment you've got to go through several sets of doors, and if somebody's got something on their hands and got something in their eyes, first instinct is to rub a dirty hand into their eye, which make a problem worse. So we're trying to get that resolved at the moment as well.
So again, if you can't see where you're going as well, at least like tripping hazards.
And then they're smearing grease and stuff on doors. It's getting really annoying.
It spreads through like wildfire, doesn't it? But the biggest thing, notice the main things on this form, the description of hazard types, and the risk rating, which the risk rating can lead into like those controller implementation as well, which is reducing that from higher to lower. Excellent. So one thing that we use, I guess, is basically helps us rate a risk, and we basically compare how likely something is to happen to how bad it would be if it did, hence the likelihood, the consequence. Let me give you an example. Like for example, like a frayed power cord, for example, that can shock someone. In terms of likelihood, I mean, the chances of a power cable being frayed, I mean, with everything, it should be getting test and tagged, and you should be inspecting, and you shouldn't be like leaving cables to get tripped on or anything, or they get nicked. But in terms of likelihood, it is possible. So we can have a look at the table. It could be around that 3 possible. And consequence, I mean, getting shocked could lead to a quite severe, maybe almost like major consequence, leading to that H12. Let's think about some other practical examples that we might come across in the bike shop. Let's say, for example, changing a bike tire, using a sharp lever to wedge it out, with the consequence of, or not the consequence, but let's say potential of like having a cut finger from.
You put that down as a possible.
Possible, definitely agreed. And consequence wise,
consequence could be moderate because you'll could break skin, see a bit of blood or whatever, or a bruise or loss of a fingernail. I've seen that before.
Some people might, as soon as they see blood as well, faint, and who knows, they might have a head injury. Or
I have seen that too.
Thinking about like another example that we might come across in a bike shop. Let's say a customer's dropped off a heavy e-bike, for example, and you're trying to lift this heavy e-bike onto a stand. Just one person. Can you think of like maybe likelihood?
Likelihood could be, let's say you could have depending on how they lift it, of course.
Yep.
But if they're trying to lift it by themselves and don't use correct lifting techniques, it could be a likely.
Yep.
Way of injuring themselves, and then I'd say something like that could result in a major type incident because they could bulge a disc or do something like that, and could cause a significant injury.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like a back injury as well, like they might miss months and months of work as well from like recovery, and their work might not.
And after one of them, a person's never the same.
Oh, again, and like you've got to think about legal action to the bike shop as well. Without getting too boring, we'll cover one more example. Let's think about, you're charging an e-bike battery nearing some flammable materials that haven't been packed away in the safety cupboard. Can you think of like something that might?
Well, I'm thinking of the bike itself. So you got a lot of these people buying these cheap e-bikes from China and bring them in, and the quality control isn't normally what we'd be expecting, and there is a possible likelihood of it bursting into flames.
Yes.
Once that happens, a thermal runaway and stuff like that, it would be a severe outcome. especially if somebody's trapped or around that bicycle when it decides to flame off. Those lithium batteries are horrible things.
Yeah, and that would almost be leading to that severe consequence. Definitely excellent, and definitely grasp the idea of having that risk matrix. So we'll move on from the risk matrix to identifying some potential hazards in the workplace. I'll print off a copy. So feel free. I know your arm is a bit sore, so you don't have to draw anything or handwrite anything, but that's just in case you can't see the board properly. But
okay, well,
on the diagram, there's plenty of
I can see several straight off the bat. So the lady with the tablet in her hand, her dress is caught in the roller.
Yep.
For the conveyor.
Agreed. Yep.
Then you got the guy in the middle who's using totally incorrect lifting techniques. He's using his back and not his knees.
Yeah, they call it nature's crane, but definitely incorrect.
The forklift, is losing hydraulic fluid by the looks of things, or coolant, one of the two. So that's not quite kosher.
Yep.
Then you've got the guy, trying to lift out the bottom parcel out of what looks like an unstable stacking method.
For sure.
And so he's going to end up with something landing on his head by the looks of things.
Yep, and no head protection as well.
Yeah. Where's his bump cap? But anyway, the other thing I've noticed too, you've got what looks like to be wires hanging out of that pillar on the right there.
Of course.
None of them are wearing safety glasses. None of them are wearing what I can see adequate PPE. You've got the guy in thongs lifting up that box as well.
Perfect.
And the lady with the dress about to get caught is wearing high-heeled shoes, which you wouldn't really want to have in that type of environment.
Yeah.
There's a few things going on there. I wouldn't like to work in that spot. I tell you what.
Excellent. Well, great observations, and I can't fault it. You've spotted all. Plus, you're way above and beyond the 5 hazards. Good work. So what we've done now, we've just had a quick walk through the bike shop. I've taken several photos that I've quickly identified in this bike shop that I deem as a potential hazard.
Well, you must have come through when we're doing the renovations.
So I just wanted to see if we're on the same page, if you can spot some of the hazards that have been found in your workplace.
All right. Well, you've got the on the left there, the containers containing an unidentified substance, so you don't know what's in it, whether it's regular lubricants or whether it's something poisonous or whether it's something volatile.
Completely
you don't know what's there, so they should go and be disposed of properly. Then you got Emilio there. I've told him numerous times, to ask for help, but he's really bad at stuff like that, carrying metal sheets around.
Yeah.
So he has been told off, before about that. I believe he's improved since that photo's been taken.
Yep.
And somebody modifying the guard.
I think I was hiding a little bush to get him camera type moment.
Yeah, I think somebody was doing axes. Trying to sharpen their axe, and you try and explain to them you don't use the side of the wheel.
No, excellent. And I'm glad you've picked them up, because we might even use the hazard identification form a little bit later and notify your supervisors as well, just so these type of things can get prevented. Okay, so let's move on to hierarchy of control. So what we've done to begin with was identifying risks and assessing the hazard that implies in terms of that risk analysis. The hierarchy of control has basically been developed to eliminate or reduce that level from severe to less severe. Just so you don't have to listen to my voice too much, I have found a good YouTube video to watch that summarizes the hierarchy of controls quite nicely. Just to give you a break from my voice, if you feel like watching this.
The hierarchy of controls. The level of risk associated with an event can be established by assessing the chance of the event happening, likelihood, and the potential harm or damage the event could cause, consequences. Plan and implement controls to eliminate or reduce risks before you proceed with your task. Some types of controls are more effective than others. Use the hierarchy of controls to choose the best method. Eliminating the hazard, physically removing it, is the most effective hazard control. Substitution, the second most effective hazard control, involves replacing something that produces a hazard, similar to elimination, with something that does not produce a hazard. The third most effective means of controlling hazards is engineered controls. These do not eliminate hazards, but rather isolate people from hazards. Administrative controls are changes to the way people work. Examples of administrative controls include procedure changes, employment training, and installation of signs and warning labels, such as those in the Hazardous Chemical Information System. Personal protective equipment, PPE, is the last line of defence. It acts as a barrier to limit your exposure to hazards. PPE must be used to supplement higher levels of control. As you go about your work, continue to monitor the effectiveness of those controls and look for any changes to the task or work area. For more safety and training solutions, visit pertrain.com.au.
So that concludes the video on hierarchy of controls. Was there anything surprising about the video? Have you come across the controls before?
No, I have come across controls before, and it's fairly obvious of how everything works.
Perfect.
You know.
Can you think of any examples that you might have used in the bike shop in terms of PPE or admin controls?
Well, PPE, is basically, issuing with gloves and safety glasses and so on and so forth. Administrative controls, we've got warnings of, outside the workshop that, only authorised people are to enter, because the last thing you want is a customer rolling in,
For sure.
and, to wear, your safety glasses when you go in. But primarily, you try and remove the risk,
Fundamentally, that's
because that's the better way of going.
of course, excellent. Most effective as well. So, using from that, I guess, bit of background on the hierarchy controls, we're going to think about, we're going to do an activity where we're going to be applying controls of some of the risks that I've found in the workshop. So, again, like when I was around walking before, I found like an oil spill on the ground. I've snapped a photo of it. Can you think of ways of how you would fix an oil spill on the ground? Like what type of controls might you implement?
I don't know if you noticed, we do have some spill kits. So that, they contain like your key to liver, spill controls, and absorbent pads.
Excellent.
So basically, whoever spilled that should be given a kick up the backside. But they've been told, to use a spill kit if they do have an oil spill, clean it up ASAP. To get rid of oil residue, so you don't have the slippery surface. And we've got a container to put contaminated equipment which has been used to contain the spill into.
Excellent.
For disposal.
Perfect. And I guess the only thing I'd add on top, you'd probably maybe want to raise the incident or report it to supervisor or whatnot, just so they're tracking of what consumables have been used in the kit, just for further down the line, so they can replace those pads or whatnot. Moving on to, I guess, the next hazard I found. Someone was using a dodgy, someone had some exposed cables on it. Can you think of ways that you might apply controls to this
immediately,
situation?
if I saw that, I'd be pulling that device immediately out of service. And depending on what it is, if it's something which can be repaired, have it repaired. Call an electrician in to put a new cable on it. If it can't be, then cut the cable off and throw it in the bin.
Yeah, perfect. Can't add any more, I guess. If I was to line it up, so you've basically mentioned it, but in terms of using that hierarchy control, elimination, you would have removed the faulty tool from service. If you think about substitution, ensure tools maintained regularly, been EIT'd if they plug into the wall, like that previous fault, have installation guides.
And the guys are being told to inspect their gear before they start using it too. So
and that leads into that administration check. Excellent. And PPE. I mean, you wouldn't want to be wearing gloves around that still. But yeah, if you're using like light tools, whatever, don't forget hearing protection or along those type of lines. So moving on to identifying emergency equipment. So I briefly touched on the start of the lesson of in terms of an emergency, evacuation procedures and where the first aid kits are located outside. Just bear in mind, it's quite important to know where these are in the workplace because it can totally make a life-saving difference. In case of the emergency, I've gone through where the fire exits are and where the fire extinguishers are, and bear in mind some of the equipment like lithium might have a different fire extinguisher to a carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide one. Apologies. So when something big happens, or small, it's important to like make a note of what's been happening. And your managers have given me an example of what you guys use. It's known as an incident report form. Some of the main details that you might put in this incident report form are, the date of the incident, time of the incident, location, description, just what's happened, the actions taken on what you've done. Maybe a bit of analysis of like contributing factors if it's been caused by lazy workshop miss. Just bear in mind, if you're filling out one of these forms, to keep your writing legible because this can be a legal document. Do you have any questions on incident report forms?
No.
No, excellent. So we'll go through an activity. I'm going to print off. I'm doing it again. So we're going through an activity. In terms of like just analyze an emergency scenario. For example, customers come into the shop. They're obviously in a rush. They want to grab the bike off the shelf themselves. They haven't seen any staff. They've gone over past the border and they've tripped over an air pump hose. Is there like how would you respond to this incident? Is there things that you would look out for? Is there things that you can implement in place to stop that from happening in the future?
Well, the first thing would be, as I said, there was signage up to warn people not to come, unauthorised people to come into the workshop. So obviously, you need to have, some form of barrier in place to stop that scenario from happening to begin with. So it could be something as simple as a chain across the door, just to make that physical barrier. The next thing would be, so if that was to happen, you first make sure the customer's okay, provide first aid, whatever is required. Then you start looking at what controls, what failed. So, in this instance, the customer's able to come in. Secondly, somebody leaving an air hose on the ground for them to trip over. So why wasn't that picked up and put away straight after use? Why wasn't it flagged to show visually that it was there, if it was still in use? So you'd be looking at that situation as well. So the contributing factors, they tripped over that.
Yep.
So you'd be putting in, things such as a hose run, so it's highly visible, but it armours the hose and acts as a visual indication that it's there, and will hopefully prevent people tripping on it.
Yep.
So that'll be another control, but I think the most important one is to minimise access into that area.
You get perfect, bang on, nailed it in the head. That elimination, like if the customer's not getting to the backstage, like they should be tripping in the first place.
But you need to also have those controls for the people working in that space too. So,
agreed.
Because they're also subject to that risk.
For sure. And then another scenario that you might come across, you've been looking after an apprentice. You've sent him off to do a job. He comes back to you holding his hand, and he's cut his hand with a tool with blood pouring out. What would you kind of do in this?
Firstly, administer first aid. Make sure you can get the bleeding stop. Ascertain whether he requires stitches or not. If he requires stitches, then arrange for him to be sent to the doctor or hospital, so that can be addressed. you find out what tool he was using.
Yep.
And then the questions to be asked was, as an apprentice, had he been shown how to use that particular tool? Had he been given the appropriate training into the task he was doing? Was there a work method statement or SOP for that task he was actually performing?
Yep.
So, so you'd have to look down those lines and see, all right, well, if it's something he hadn't been taught, why was he doing that job?
No.
Who was meant to be supervising him at that time?
Where was that? Yeah, supervision as well. And yeah, you've done the first aid and made sure he's life-threatening injuries. Yeah, stop. Excellent. So that concludes the refresher training. I can definitely see your understanding of risks and everything is very sound. Very thoroughly impressed. The back shop is in good hands with you as the manager. We'll quickly wrap up with some summary questions. Just briefly, what is a hazard? What have you come across from today's lesson?
So a hazard is something with the potential to cause harm.
Yep.
How do you reduce risk? Well, try and eliminate the hazard.
Perfect.
And what would you do in an emergency? Well, it's basically, firstly make sure, depending on what it is, if it's somebody who's injured themselves, make sure that person is okay, has any injuries attended to, and where possible, where it's required, send them for further assessment in a medical facility. If it's a fire, then you'll have your fire egress policies, which you'd have to follow. Every location is different, where it's required, call 000.
Excellent. Perfect. So yeah, that concludes today's session. Is there any further questions from you before we finish up?
I think you've covered everything. So.
Excellent. Thank you for your time and stay safe.
You too.